Hello everyone and welcome to Tech with Robert, the Get Started with T-SQL course. In this lecture we're going to talk about how we can work with dates and the different data types that SQL Server provides for us. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give a thumbs up on the video if you like what I do. That really helps me to know what I do well and what you guys want me to improve on or focus more on in the future lectures. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So there are different types of data types that we covered in the previous two lectures, but we also have date and date time data types. And so if we write our first query here, we can see we have, if you want to select the current date, we could write the select get date and then open and closing parentheses like this. And if we run that, we see that we will get the date, the year, the month, and the day, and also the hour, minutes, and seconds, and also milliseconds here. So we have a couple of different types of date data types, and the first is just date. And we're going to talk more about how we can cast and convert different data types in the future lectures. So don't worry about this cast method right here for right now. So if we write here, if we say, we could say select, and we say cast get date as date. We say like this. So the first date data type is just the date. It's just a simple year, month, and day data type, date, and that is used for storing, just year, month, and date dates. We also have another one here. If we say we select cast get date as date, we also have small date time. Say we could do small date time like this. No, wait. Let me just do like this instead. Like this. And so here we see that what the small date time data type does is that we get the same one as we get here, but instead we also have the hour, the minutes, and the seconds here. So the seconds is going to be 0 here. But the third type, the type that we have is, and that is what we display here in the get date. That's the date time data type. So we could write, or we could say select cast date as a simple just date time. See here. And then now you see you get the same results as the get date here. And here what it does, it also adds the seconds and the milliseconds. So it's a little bit more precise. But there's another one which is datetime 2, which is essentially the same. It just adds a little bit more of precision to the date. So we see here we also have nanoseconds here. So that, we have more precise here. And the last one is the datetime offset. So if we look at this one, we see datetime offset. This one is very, very precise. So we see here we're also including the UTC here. And so these are the different data types that we can date data types that we can work with, and I've sort of taken them from the sort of the most non-precise and then more and more precise over here. And the difference between them is, well, what type of date, how precise do you need to store it in your data, in your database, and that is what's going to determine which one of these date data types you use in your tables. I would say that the most commonly used one are just simple date time and date, but there are scenarios where you could also use datetime 2 and datetime offset. As we looked at in previous lectures with the string, we have also a lot of we had string functions, and at the same time we have date functions. So we can find them in the same way as we did with the string functions. If you go to programmability, and then here you have date and time functions, and we can see here that we have a lot of different date functions. And so I'm going to cover a few of them here. And so we could say, let's say that we wanted to display, we get a table where we get a lot of dates like this, and we wanted a separate column. So we're going to sort of model our data. We're going to use it to create the reports in Excel or Power BI or whatever. And we would like to have a field where we could group data based on the year. So we could say, for example, we want the year on the x-axis, and then we want, on the y-axis, we want to see how much sales we had for each year. So we need a column. So we need to extract the year from this date over here. And so what we could do is we could write select, and then we could type year, and then the date that we're going to extract the date from is going to be the get date, like this. Then we can type year, and let me just comment this out for now. So if we write here, we see we can just do cast get date as date, like this. So now we see that, okay, the current date here, the year is 2023, and you see now when we specify that we want the year of that date, we see we only get here 2023. And in the same way, we could use month of the get date. And we see that now we will get the month, the 5th month. And as you could imagine, we also have a day of get date, like this. So these functions here are used to extract a piece of, a piece of date, from the date field here. And we also have something called a date part and date name. So it's kind of the same here, but it's a little bit more sophisticated in the way that you have more things that you can extract. So for example, if we take a look at the date part first, so let me just write a comment here. I will say date part, and we could say that we want to select the date part, and here we need to specify what type, what is the interval, what do we want to extract. So there are quite a lot that you can use, and I'm not going to cover all of them here, but I will leave a link in the description below if you want to read more about them. And so the first one is what we just took a look at. We could write month, and then we need to pass in what date we want to work with. So we say the get date. And if we run this, you see we will get the same thing as we get here from using the month of the get date, but we're using another function here. So we're using the date part function, and we're passing in the date that we want to extract the date part from, and then here we're specifying what part of the date we want to select. And so we could do the same thing here. We could write, for example, date part, we could use week, or we could say get date, like this. And now you see we get 22, so it's week 22. There is also a similar one, but instead of date part, it's date name. And so the difference here, let me just show you. If I type date name here and I say month, and then the same as before, the get date, watch what happens here. I get May. So I get the month, the 5th month number, but instead of the number 5, I get the actual name of the month, which is May. And this doesn't make sense now because we are in May, but there are a lot of people who they don't want, when they're creating a report, a bar chart or a line chart or whatever, they don't want to display the full month names in the on the x-axis. So they want they want Jan, Feb, Mar, and so on. So they only want the first 3 letters. So what we could do is, it's going to show the same thing here, but just to prove a point here, we could say that we want left, and then we say 3 here, and we could say this as month name short, for example. And now since May is only 3 letters, but if we would say January here, it would just say Jan here. And at the same time that we did here, we do the date part week. We could also write the date name, but let me just see here. We also have something called date add and also date diff. So there are a couple of more things we could do with this. We could add we could, for example, we could add a year or 2 months or 5 months or whatever to a specific date. So what we would do then is we would type date add, and we're going to specify here what we want to add. Do we want to add a year or a month, or a day or a week, or what do we want to add? So in this case, let's just say we want to add a year. Okay, and then we specify the incremental as an integer. How many years do we want to increment the date with? Let's say just say 2, and then we pass in the date that we want to apply this on. So if we run this, we see that we have added 2 years to the current date here. So instead of 2023, we see 2025 here. And this works the same way for if we wanted to add like 3 months, for example. We could do that. So we see now instead of the month of May, we have number 8 here instead. We can, and lastly, we can also have date diff, so we could calculate the difference between 2 dates. So we can extract like how many months difference, how many year difference, or how many, how many days are between these dates. And that is with the date diff function. So we can write date diff, and what we want to get the difference in is the number of years. So we could specify 2 years, 2 dates here. So we could say 2023, we could say 0101 like this, and then we could say 2026, 0101 like this. And so if we run this, let's see, if we run this, there's 3 years, this difference between, you see, because we have 2023 and 2026. So there's the difference is 3 years. And we could also do this for, let's say, a month. We could say we want the date diff in month, and we could use get date. And for example, we could say 2023, we could say 12, we could say 24, Christmas. So we want to see the difference here. So it's 7 months difference between these 2 dates. Lastly, I want to go through that we could format the dates in different ways, and we have some pre-built ways of doing this. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to, because I don't know all of these in the head. I could just type a few here, but there's very well documented, so I'm going to leave a link in the description here. Let's say that you wanted to, let's say if we just select get date like this. Let me just actually create a new query here. Let's say get date. We see the get date is in this format that we have right here. But we could use, if we say select, we can say convert, and we specify here, we say we want to convert it to a varchar, and what we want to convert is the get date, and we can say here, we can type a number here. So when I type 7, it's going to format the date in this way here. So we say the month here in full name, so we say May 30th and then 23. And we could say that we wanted, for example, 112 and 23 like this. So notice what's happening here. We see we get 3 different formats on the date here. And so that is it for this lecture. I just want to highlight that it's really important to know how to work with dates and how you can use these different date functions, because you will work a lot with dates in your database. You will, for example, let's say you want to calculate my cat here. You want to calculate how many years there are between different dates. You would say, for example, if you have in your database, you have like a date where the first product was purchased, and then you would see, okay, so how many for how many years or months has this product been selling for, and stuff like that. So, and also whenever you add new records to a data, you will store it as a date, so you will see like when was this record added and stuff like that. So it's really important to learn how to work with dates and date times. That is it for this lecture. In the next lecture, I am going to talk about how we can sort our query results with the order by clause. So we're going to take a look at that. Thank you.